Hi there, my name's Michael. I'm from New Zealand, which is a small chain of islands in the Pacific Ocean. 3 islands: North Island, South Island and Stewart Island. New Zealand was originally populated by the Maori, who, as legend tells us, travelled from other Pacific islands in the Pacific Ocean to New Zealand many hundreds of years ago. They travelled to New Zealand in boats, what they call wakas, which is a big boat with no top. It looks like a banana, shaped like a banana. And they came to New Zealand and they lived there for many hundreds of years, sometimes peacefully, sometimes they had fights with each other, but eventually they congregated in different parts of the country and they became famous for the area that they lived in. So these particular Maori came from one particular place. In the mid-1800s, the first white people from Britain discovered New Zealand and put New Zealand on the map, around the same time that Australia was discovered. These British came to New Zealand and found that the country was already inhabited by the Maori people. The Maori people were welcoming at first, but as more and more British arrived to colonize the country, war broke out. Eventually the war got very savage because the Maori were fighting with sticks and rocks and sharp knives, whereas the British brought pistols and muskets and gunpowder and explosives and modern warfare. So a peaceful solution had to be found, and a gentleman named James Bugbee drafted what was known as the Treaty of Waitangi. Waitangi was a town in the North Island where the treaty was signed. The treaty was written between I think it was the King of England at the time, and the people of New Zealand, the Maori, and they were represented by their chiefs. So every chief came from his special part of New Zealand and signed the Treaty of Waitangi to stop the New Zealand land wars, as they are now known. So this was in roughly 1850, 1860, so a good 170 years ago. After the Treaty of Waitangi was signed, more and more British citizens came to New Zealand and began to populate the country. After that we got into whaling, and a lot of whales were killed in New Zealand. Unfortunately, because of the Maori land wars, a lot of Maori were killed, a lot of British people were killed as well. So there's always been a bit of animosity, a bit of hatred between the white settlers and the Maori people. This still survives to today. So peace reigns in New Zealand, but it is very, very unstable. After the British colonised New Zealand, New Zealand was ruled by the government and the Queen of England, or the King of England as it was at that point. So New Zealand is a Commonwealth of Great Britain and still is to this day, much like Australia. We have the British flag as part of our flag. So we are ruled by the Queen, and I don't think many people have a problem with that. I think the Queen just rules us, it doesn't really matter. We have a New Zealand government and politicians and all that rubbish too. So we live very peacefully with the Pacific Islands around us in Australia. We don't like Australia, and Australia does not like New Zealand. It's playful though, it's not that serious. What else? So today, modern New Zealand is known for things like the All Blacks. We are famous for our rugby. We are famous for the Tall Blacks. The Silver Ferns, our national netball team, who quite often compete with the Australian netball team and lose. The symbol of our country is the silver fern, which is a leaf of a plant. And on one side it will be green, on the other side it is coloured silver, hence its name, the silver fern. This is either a symbol to represent the team, or it is a logo on their sleeve or on their chest. It is always found on every sports uniform for every national team in New Zealand. New Zealand is also famous for, obviously, the Lord of the Rings, but about 20 years ago, a man named Ajax Hackett invented a sport in New Zealand whereby you tie a long rope to your ankles and you jump off buildings and bridges. This is called bungee jumping, and it is a very popular extreme sport, and a lot of thrill seekers travel from around the world to take part in this activity in New Zealand. It's a lot of fun. I haven't done it personally, but I've seen a lot of crazy people do it. And so bungee jumping was invented in New Zealand, which is very famous. We've got Peter Jackson, who directed The Lord of the Rings. He's done many other films in New Zealand, which have been very popular overseas. The Lord of the Rings is a big one, all shot in New Zealand. And of course, our biggest claim to fame is probably the rugby, how fierce we are at playing rugby, and of course our national team, the All Blacks. The All Blacks have been prominent in international rugby as long as rugby has been played. Our modern team usually take to the grounds, and before a game is played they will challenge their opposition with the haka. The haka is a traditional Maori war dance. It is performed, according to Maori, it is performed before a battle to intimidate, to scare their opponents and to put fear into them. So the entire purpose of doing the haka is to make the other team afraid. If they are afraid, they will not play as well and they will be beaten by the mighty All Blacks. So it is a Maori chant with Maori actions. I'm not going to sing it for you. I know the words, but I'm not going to do it. But it is a challenge. So it is very important to understand that it is to invoke fear, to make your opponent afraid of you, to say, we are here, we are going to beat you. And that is the purpose of the haka. Apart from the silver fern, we have the kiwi bird, which is our other national symbol. The kiwi is an endangered species. It is also only found in New Zealand, much like the tuatara, which is a lizard which actually survives from the dinosaurs. It is one of the only reptiles left in the world that actually walked around at the same time as the dinosaurs. The tuatara, just like the kiwi, is only found in New Zealand. The kiwi and the tuatara are both symbols of New Zealand. They are on our notes and on our coins, our money. The kiwi is very popular. It is a very beautiful little bird, but it is endangered because of possums and other vermin which kill them. So there is a lot of work in New Zealand to protect the kiwi. We have sanctuaries and people farming kiwis around the country to try and bring back this beautiful little bird. The kiwi is much like the penguin in which it cannot fly, which means that it is very susceptible to being hunted and killed by man and by other animals like ferrets and stoats and dogs and cats and possums. So it can't escape, it cannot fly away, much like penguins cannot fly away from polar bears. So the kiwi is definitely an endangered species and needs to be protected. It is a beautiful bird. If you ever get to hold one, they are very soft and very delicate. They are also not very fond of the light, so they only ever come out at night time. So there you have a little breakdown of New Zealand. You've got the haka, you've got the silver fern, you've got the tuatara, our own living dinosaur. Bungee jumping is a big sport in New Zealand, as is whitewater rafting, kayaking, which is on a canoe, whale watching. A lot of that happens in New Zealand. It is a very beautiful country and I would highly recommend visiting it at some point.
Thank you, Mike Bugbee.
No problem. You can cut it
Just for you, kids. Just for you.